Hi, my name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 34.6, The End of Timelines. I have a very light history with Megaman as a multimedia property. I didn't have the chance to play any of the games until I was well into my late teens, so it's not like they're formative games for me. I do remember reading Nintendo Power magazine in the mid to late 90s, and I remember poring over the designs for some of the bad guys, probably for Mega Man X. But that's pretty much my involvement with Mega Man. I didn't watch the cartoon, I didn't read any of the comics or manga. I do very vaguely remember watching a bit of the Battle Network anime when it hit stateside, but I didn't stick with it. I didn't like it very much, and I never played those games. However, I am a comic guy, and when my friend Bard, who is a Mega Man fan, asked me about getting his hands on this series of comics, I volunteered my services. I got the comics for him so long as he paid me back, and in the meantime, I read them. And then figured I'd try out a little new format for the show, try and speed run these comics and talk about them a little bit, because I don't have a lot of history with it. So for a series that's acting as an introduction to Mega Man, this is kind of the perfect test for me as a reader, and then it means for these episodes I'm hopefully not going to run super long talking into it. So I wanted to try the little format change out, and as someone from outside of the fandom of Mega Man, I think it's kind of obvious, these books do a real uneven job. The simpler Mega Man and X issues, I do think work pretty well, with the creative teams adding a touch of existential questioning to a character that is historically silent. The villains are relatively simple, the stories are pretty straightforward, and they work well for the most part. Out of the 5 one-shots, I think that those 2 issues are some of the best quality overall, and I would like to see what their creative teams could do with the character moving forward, which is good because Udon has dropped a Mega Man X ongoing series featuring the same creative team as the Timelines one-shot. I do have some complaints about that, though, and we'll get to it later. The middle Z and ZX chapters are honestly, in my opinion, the most promising as a larger story, as an ongoing series. I think that they absolutely suck as one-shots, but there is so much Mega Man history there, and there's so much that's changed that I wouldn't mind seeing that explored in a longer form narrative. These 2 comics offer an incredibly changed landscape, years of continuity that has happened between games, we've got new protagonists, complicated villains, and we got more layers than Shrek. There is just so much focus on the world of those 2 comics that the Mega Man character in each of them is just incredibly less interesting. They just never had a chance to shine or be people in their own right. I did like the gimmick that we got with ZX, with him being able to combine different biometals to create different armors. I think that's a nice bit of customization, and it's a cool play on Mega Man taking the superpowers from his defeated enemies. As a gameplay mechanic, I really like that, and then I already talked about my negative thoughts in the episode covering that comic. These 2 promise larger, more sweeping worlds, with even more moral complexity, which I think would be a great thing to explore in an ongoing series. But they are also my least favorite in terms of overall execution, at least from a writing perspective. Finally, I obviously enjoyed the Legends issue, as it felt the most standalone out of all of them. It was the most entertaining for me, specifically, and it was just plain the most funnest comic book. Does it lack moral complexity? Yes. Does it ask anything interesting about that particular Mega Man or his world? No, absolutely not. But would I love to see a 52-episode anime in the same vein as Pokemon, with its dopey villain characters and innocent lead characters going on fun quests around a flooded world? Heck yes, I would! So as somebody who is unfamiliar with Mega Man, or considers himself unfamiliar with Mega Man going into this was a really uneven crash course in the character's history. I can't really judge it from the perspective of a fan who, gets all the jokes and all the references and lore and knows all the continuity. As a comic reader, which is something that I will arrogantly say I consider myself something of an expert in being. Y'all, this was rough. First off, I believe that all of these books were released late. And as a comic book fan, that's really frustrating. Udon's initial announcement made plain that they were going to release these 5 books over the course of 5 months, finishing the whole story in 2025 after last year's free Comic Book Day Mega Man issue. The plan was for them to start in May and end in September. Instead, the first one dropped in June of 2025, and the final 2 dropped in January of 2026. And honestly, having now read the comic books, I do not see why. They aren't double-sized, they aren't particularly beautiful or unique, there's no gimmicks going on like a hollow foil glow-in-the-dark pop-up page that would have complicated the production schedule and made things slower. Now, my friend Bard, who is the Mega Man guy, suspects that it's because Capcom is notably strict about the quality of product that they let get released in their name. And if that is the case, like, good for them for trying to maintain a high set of standards for their IP. But if that's true, then their standard of quality is a lot lower than mine? Maybe that's a me issue, maybe that's a them issue, I don't know. Because really, when you look at these comics, they're so uneven. Udon promised a story that would stretch across Mega Man history, connecting all of these eras. And while technically, yeah, the blue patched Met fits that bill, its story at the end is ultimately super unsatisfying. The first 2 stories use the same emotional beat, although I do think they do it well. The next 2 are total departures from what those first 2 established, and then Legends is an anime episode in the best way. This series of one-shots, it doesn't arc, it doesn't build, it doesn't connect the mega dots in an interesting mega way. It's just kind of a mega thing that happens to have the timeline name tagged onto it, and it just feels so weird. This honestly just feels like 5 dudes named Mega Man do stuff. And Zero isn't even named Mega Man, dude. He's just a dude named Zero. I understand that might change if I was a Mega Man fan and if I had played all the games and watched all the shows and read all the wikis. But as Stan Lee is once said to have said, every comic is somebody's first comic, and the reader needs to understand everything about the comic and enjoy it enough to keep them reading next month. So in reality, this was 5 separate first issues, and honestly, it wouldn't keep me reading. And in fact, with the release of the Mega Man X ongoing series, it hasn't kept me reading. I see this release style as a problem in and of itself. Branding this as a series of 5 different one-shots with the timeline subtitle is just super weird. From a comic ordering standpoint, it's one thing to ask your store to order the Mega Man comic. You walk in, you go, hey, this is who I am. Can you pull the Mega Man comic coming out from Udon later this year? And they go, oh, okay, and they put it on your sub list. That's easy. It is a completely different thing to go into your comic store and go, hey, this is who I am. Can you order Mega Man Timelines issue 1 and Mega Man Timelines X issue 1 and Mega Man Timelines 0 issue 1 and bubba-dubba-dubba-dubba-dubba-dubba? Why not just call this whole thing Mega Man Timelines and be done with it? Do an easy 1 through 5 numbering, bam, you're done. You can just go in the store and go, hey, can you order Mega Man Timelines for me and put it on my sub list? And they go, okay, and then that's it. You get your comic. Doing this would also address another big complaint that I have, because releasing these as 5 one-shots means that there's no prescribed reading order. If you're unfamiliar with the Mega Man timeline, then you have no idea what to read these comics in. Thankfully for me, while I am not an expert, I am familiar enough with gaming history to know the general arc of Mega Man games, and so I knew to read this in terms of Mega Man, and then X, Zero, ZX, Legends. But if you're not a Mega Man fan, if you're just a dude in a comic shop looking around for an interesting comic to read, and you go, oh, I remember playing a Mega Man game when I was a kid, I might check this out. You have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea of a read order. And thankfully Udon did publish these, starting with the earliest time period and ending with the one farthest from that point. So they do progress sequentially in order, props for that, but now that they're finished, and these one-shots will be sitting in back issue bins, A new reader is going to have no idea what order they should be read in. A 1 through 5 miniseries fixes that problem as well. And when each issue ends, there is no to be continued in. Like when you finish reading Megaman Timelines issue 1, there is no to be continued in Mega Man X, to be continued in Mega Man Zero, to be continued in Mega Man ZX. None of that. There is, generally speaking, an ad for the next issue, so you would turn a couple pages and then there will be Mega Man X is the next comic coming out, right? But then it's also going to tell you that it's coming out in August of 2025, and then it never drops in August of 2025. So if you don't have a pull list and you're just going to your comic store, when is your comic coming out? I don't know. Nobody knows. This is a mystery. I am assuming that Udon did the 5 one-shot release style because traditionally in the American comic book industry, first issues sell better than any other issue in a series. Given how Udon has been releasing their Street Fighter stuff for the past couple of years, I would think that certainly seems to be the case. But I gotta tell you, it sure makes it really frustrating to track what is coming out, when it's coming out, and where in a story it's supposed to take place. That would be especially true of Timelines, as like I said, there is no reading order listed, printed, or to be continued anywhere in this comic. If you didn't get the 2025 Free Comic Book Day Mega Man issue that has the, like, this is our planned release schedule for Mega Man, then you have no idea reading these books. And I mean, the month that Udon published the final 2 issues, January of 2026, they also published Mega Man X issue 0. Which works as an introduction to that ongoing series, and I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, so now we have a Mega Man X ongoing series that opens with Chill Penguin already being dead. I'm hoping, and I didn't read it because I didn't like the Mega Man X issue enough to keep buying more Mega Man X stuff, but I'm hoping that the 0 issue has like an explanation of here's what set up the problems in Mega Man X, and then he killed Chill Penguin, and now you go into the rest of the narrative from there. Because from a collecting perspective, now do you need to buy Mega Man X Timelines issue 1, and then Mega Man X issue 0, and then Mega Man X issue 1, and then continue to buy the ongoing comic book? Like, why wouldn't you just have Timelines overall story be like a lead-in to the narrative of Mega Man X somehow? Does the Mega Man X series reference or tie into the Timelines one-shot at all? Are these things connected, or do you just have to pay for another comic book in which Chill Penguin is going to get killed? Is this issue required reading, or are we just going to ignore it if we were going to buy Mega Man X? It's all just so mismatched and higgledy-piggledy from a publishing standpoint. I'm also assuming that Udon is counting on collecting this story in a nice trade paperback, which will make all of these previous complaints and problems at least a little bit easier. It will also make the terrible release schedule an absolutely moot point, and I realize that. These problems will hopefully be fixed in the trade, but as a monthly comic buyer, and as Udon's first shot at making money on these comics that they have paid to have produced, honestly, I think that they did a pretty poor job. Like, I hate how late all the various Street Fighter one-shots that they've been releasing for the past 2 years are. I buy them all, I like them all to varying degrees of quality, but I show up for the Street Fighter stuff because I like the Street Fighter stuff. But they don't promise any kind of sequential release point at all. There's currently a Darkstalker / Street Fighter. To me, it's a mini-series going on, where the two groups have to team up in order to stop an invasion of demons on Earth, but Udon is releasing that as a series of one-shots with its own subtitle name for each one. So they're actually different one-shots that are published sequentially. I have the same problems with this as I have with Mega Man, but they never promised, hey, we're going to get them all out in 5 months. No, they just went, I don't know, we're going to put out another comic eventually at some point in time. And at least I can rely on the fact that they are saying we are unreliable. I want to say the next Street Fighter comic for me is Street Fighter Masters Ken. And I don't know when it's coming out, but I know at some point in the future. I know that if I show up at a comic shop and I see it, I'll go, oh, okay, now it came out. But buying it for somebody who's outside of the comic book industry, I don't have to. If Bard came up to me and he was like, "Hey, did you get the new issue of Mega Man?" I'm gonna go, no, it didn't come out, or it came out and my shop didn't order it because nobody wants it because no one can figure out the publication schedule. It's so much unnecessary, frustrating work for buying a comic book when there's all of these structures in place that make it easy to buy comic books. I am vaguely used to the wobbly quality of Udon's comics as a Street Fighter fan for goddamn 20 years now. But I thought that with Udon doing this project as a whole project, right, planned well in advance and with multiple different creative teams, I thought it would allow them the time to coordinate and smooth their stories out and connect things in a way that is interesting and cool. Like, that is the job of a comic book editor, to facilitate communication and make sure that everyone is on the same page from the stories they're telling. And instead, this almost feels like 5 comics that were made in a vacuum, and then somebody went, oh, shit, we're supposed to be connecting these somehow, and then they just added in the lone surviving Met plot element to no end whatsoever. Another thing that I think the comics do, and I hate to complain about this, but I kind of gotta. Another thing that I think the comics do pretty bad is establishing the rules of the Mega Man world. In the course of writing these episodes, I've watched probably a dozen different lore videos on YouTube. I've had chats with Bard about Mega Man, and honestly, I still feel a little confused as to, like, what Mega Man is, like, originally starting, and then how does the character still exist and change as the years have gone on? Like, where does he come from? Why aren't the bad guys in these stories the bad guys? Like, the Mega Man X issue doesn't explain what a Maverick is, or who Vile is, or who Sigma is, or why he's gone rogue, or what he's hoping to accomplish. Like, the comics work as presented if you don't ask any questions, don't get me wrong. And I do feel like huge lore dumps would ruin the narrative in Mega Man and Mega Man X timelines, like they did for the Mega Man Zero issue. But I don't feel like I know or understand Mega Man any better than I did going into the series of comics. Like, when I was writing the scripts for these, I originally just called the lead character Mega Man in all of them, including the Mega Man Zero issue. I didn't know that was Zero. Because as the books go on, Mega Man changes and evolves enough that, like, the basic theming is there for, like, oh, I get it. It's a small mechanical question mark dude who can shoot and slash people and take their superpowers. But as the series goes on, the characters look increasingly less like Mega Man. And I don't know what's going on here. Is this the same guy? Is he changing every time? Is it just I was inspired by Mega Man, so I want to dress like him? I don't know. Like I said, I at this point, I don't even consider myself an ignorant noob, but I still consider myself uneducated, and I just bought 5 comic books. I can't remember if they were $4 or $5 each, but I spent approximately I think they were $5 each. I spent $25 on this comic book series, and I'm walking away from it going, I don't know what the heck's going on with Mega Man. Ultimately, while I do think that the Mega Man Legends timeline issue ended things on a high note for me, I have to say that I found this entire shopping experience to be really frustrating. The issues were all late. The stories were all over the place. They didn't build to a satisfying conclusion. They failed to interest me in further Mega Man comics, which I consider the ultimate sin as a guy who wants to buy more comic books. I need the barest of excuses, y'all, to buy a comic book. And these 5 issues failed to provide me with any reason to buy more comic books. I did try the Mega Man X video game after doing all of my research and writing these scripts, and I found that I'm not very good at it. I won't lie. I did have a good time playing it while I was playing it, but I just reached a point where my skills as a gamer are not good enough, and I either spend more time playing video games or I can read comic books and write about comic books, and hey, here we are. I think overall this is one of those times where I think that Mega Man works better as a game that you experience than as a comic that you read. I think the Street Fighter stuff tends to work better as an adaptation because as a gameplay, you're getting a completely different experience. The game is obviously about the combat and how you fight and the way you interact with each other, and there's a story there. And I think that story, when wanting to be explored more, translates well to comic books where you can take the time to explain it, because you're probably only going to have one fight scene in a comic book, right? As opposed to a bunch of Street Fighter matches in a row playing the game. We're here with Mega Man. The Mega Man games are all about exploring the world and testing your skills in the fields of jumping and shooting, and figuring out the strategy for how to defeat your enemies. And while there is a complicated lore there, these comics do not convey that lore in a way that I feel is sufficient enough to make me happy and interested and invested in the world of Mega Man. But you know what? I'm not a Mega fan. I'm a comics guy, just dipping my toes into these clearly convoluted and differing worlds. Maybe if I knew more, my experience would have been a much improved one. I wanted to know if this was the case, and so I've asked Bard to have a little mega chat with me about Megaman Timelines. And you will see that next week. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.